Good evening. We're going to call this meeting to order. Get a motion that the closed meeting be closed and the board certifies to the best of each member's knowledge only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting to which the certification applies, and only such business matters as were identified in the motion concerning the closed meeting were heard, discussed, considered. You have a motion?
So moved.
Motion for Mr. Honeycutt, and a second for Mr. Edwards. Roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes. At this time, we're going to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to start with recognitions. It's going to be the Cyber Camp. Mr. Cyphers.
Good evening, Mr. Nichols, Mr. Chairman, and board members. Tonight, we'd like to take just a few moments to recognize our Cyber Camp students. We have 3 of our students here tonight that will be doing a short presentation for us. So I'm going to go ahead and call them up and recognize them. But before I start with the students, I'd like to recognize Miss Amy Witten. She was one of our instructors who was very instrumental in the success of our summer camp. We had 21 students who participated in our summer camp, and all of them that will be eligible for summer camp next year said they would love to come back and do it again. So we had a very successful summer camp. The students will talk to you a little bit more about it, but I just want to take a moment and recognize them first. So if you all will come up when I call your name. Frank Sorba. And Jared Leda. And Patrick Megason. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to them. Do you want to do pictures real quick first, or do you want to do pictures after the end? Whatever works best for you all is fine. And then after they do pictures, I'll turn it over to them. And like I said, they're going to talk a little bit about summer camp, and then Mr. Leda will actually demonstrate the drone for us at the end. So.
All right, so this is going to be about the Boe-Bots. Basically what we did was we took, and it was a little kit that we used and not manufactured, but we made our very own Boe-Bot from scratch, and we learned how to code it and program it to do what we needed it to do.
This is some of the pictures we took while doing it. As you can see, we have we have the computer board, we have screwdrivers as we're going through different wiring and construction processes.
This is the top right picture where we were at the SVH EC, the Southside Virginia Higher Education Center. The one in the top right is one of the servers. The one in the top left is the room where we actually met. It's got 2 Promethean boards, or boards that you can see off of. One's behind me. I'm in the bottom left of that picture. And then the bottom picture is another picture of it.
So for our school, for one of our trips, we went to the International Spy Museum in D.C. It was a 5-hour bus trip. We got to even do something called Operation Spy, which they actually, it's an hour-long thing where we did different scenarios that actual spies actually had to go through.
These are just a couple of pictures of, the top right one is us on the way, and the other one, the other two are where we are actually at it, and the bottom one is just where we're all gathered together in it at the end.
We also got a chance to visit the Microsoft Data Center, but because of the rules, we have no photos of that.
All right, what did we do? We built Boe-Bots, learned how to program them. We learned about hacking. We didn't actually hack because that's illegal. White hats are the people who are paid to hack to provide security against the black hats, which are the people who do it illegally. The drones, Jared will be flying one at the end. We learned about the safety of it and how to fly it. The volcanoes, we constructed one. Each group constructed one out of paper, glue, and paint, and a water bottle. And then we also erupted it using baking soda and vinegar. The egg drop, we had to construct a vessel from various stuff to prevent the egg from breaking when we dropped it. At the Parkview High School band field, it's got a little podium that you can go up the stairs, and we had to drop it off that and make sure it didn't break. And most of us were successful with that. The roller coaster, we learned how to collaborate with one another, and the leadership, we had to learn how to be a constructive leader, not just how to boss around. The flashlights, Frank and I will go into more detail later with that because we actually have a slide for that, but we learned what a world would be like without electricity.
Part of the flashlight activity was we had to write a short story about a world without electricity and how we could restore electricity to it. We built flashlights, homemade flashlights out of dollar store equipment like water bottles, back scratchers. We used masking tape, and we also had to we had a 9-volt battery, and we had to connect it from alligator clips to a switch to turn it on and off, and to different light bulbs, and have different various of circuits.
Electricity has played a major role in our lives, such as basically a lot of the stuff we use nowadays, 99% of it is electronic, and it's, yeah. Yeah.
All right, we also had a visit from Virginia State's bomb squad. They taught us about their different methods for disarming bombs, what the different types of bombs are. They even showed us their bomb robot, and they actually did a demonstration of how they would defuse a bomb on the band field with a controlled explosion.
All right, Learning in Motion at MCPS, which y'all know what that stands for, Mecklenburg County Public Schools. This is basically based off Rollercoaster, how it's very similar to cybersecurity. They both have ups and downs and twists and turns because no matter where you're going to go, you can go positively to where it benefits you, or you can go negatively where it's going to just tear you apart in some way. Also, our number one defense is our number one weakness, such as proxies, VPNs, that stuff. You think that you're able to be anonymous online through proxies and VPNs, but really, if you know your way around all this, you can actually hack it and trace back to where it came from. Security systems, such as cameras and alarm systems, they can both be hacked remotely to turn it off or on, depending on where you're at. The security camera you can hack, and depending on who it is, you can actually get the cache back from that security camera to figure out when somebody's leaving or when somebody returns. Basically the schedule, so that's threatening your personal security. And home appliances, just because it's a stove doesn't mean it can't be hacked.
Now we're going to go into a little bit more detail with what the drone is. We have a quadcopter Phantom 4, which is it's a more advanced form of a drone that has many features to enhance its function. It has 4 high-speed propellers that allow the copter to travel up to 22 miles per hour. It can reach an altitude of about 400 feet or 1.5 miles. It has a 4K camera, which is the highest level of a camera you can actually get. And it has a return to home feature, so if it ever loses connectivity or you lose control of it, it will come back with 50 feet of where you started.
Controlling the quadcopter, it's got a radio transmitter and it's very similar to a video game controller because it's got 2 analog sticks and it's got a couple of buttons. There are 2 main sticks for the throttle and direction. The left one, I do believe, is the one that actually makes it go up and down, and the right one would be the yaw and the roll. It basically allows it to do different maneuvers to get it through different areas. And if you're in the woods or in a military zone where you're trying to spy on people, which is actually probably really hard if you're down low to the ground with this because it's very loud, but it allows you to maneuver through different situations to where they can't catch you. And the pitch, it allows you to go backward and forward.
Now we will have a drone demonstration. And we're also going to be live streaming it on Facebook through the drone's camera. This was our test run earlier of it. Yeah, there we go. This is actually what the camera is showing right now as it flies.
As you can see, it's got very good detail for as small of a camera as it is. It's a little bit longer than this, but it's about the same width.
And it's got very small lens.
Yeah. It's the internet.
This is just some streaming issues we've been having with it. Something with the internet. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
The 400-foot altitude, is that because of regulations that it's limited to 400 feet in altitude?
They designed it because of regulations, yes. They made it so it cannot go higher for regulation purposes.
Okay, so the device is actually
Limited.
That's already built in where it won't let you fly before.
No.
At
And you are not allowed to legally fly this over highways, above cars, moving vehicles, or basically anything mobile that's moving, you can't fly it over. And sometimes even with something as small as a cell phone can interrupt the communication with the drone and make it crash. We actually had an incident with that during cybercamp. Good thing these are very durable. Alright, here we go. As you can see, it's probably about 250 right here. That's about what we...
As he was saying a little bit earlier ago about the return to home feature, once it's out of reach and it no longer has connectivity to the remote, it will actually activate that automatically to where you don't have to go searching for it. It will return to
Yeah,
you.
even if the remote battery dies, it will come back to you. Even if the drone battery is about to die, it will return to you once it hits a certain percent, depending on how far you are out. And this is Mr. Seifert, Ms. Witt, and open the door, so we're going to bring the drone in here through into this room.
As you can tell, if you don't know what it is, it sounds like a herd of bees.
Yeah, basically
Or
that's what it does.
Swarm of bees, rather.
And
And it feels really good if it's close enough.
yeah, in the hot day, this feels like, shh, watch out. There you go. Hey, Jen, higher it up a little bit. Behind the camera. I'm going to show them the drone roll up close.
All right.
It did, didn't it?
You can, yeah.
That's the 4K camera that can rotate at any degrees, and we can even lock it in place while we're transporting it. We have four rotors that we can spin, that all spin and help control it. And it can spin in place or rotate to turn and drop.
Thank you all. Mr. Sturdivant, if I might add, for obvious reasons, we're very pleased with the way the cyber camp turned out this year. It would be the summer camp activity that would be associated with our ideas of an advanced technology career center. Our goal for our students will be that each of the 6 career centers that we've been talking about would have a career-focused area like this, a camp summer activity for students to be engaged in so that they could get a sense of the actual careers that are available to them through those program experiences. And we did, with this camp, give digital badges. The digital badges actually capture the computer science, the advanced mathematics, the physics that the students and other activities, skill activities that the students engaged in as they were doing this work, and the students will be given credit for that in their student information system building. We feel like this is a tremendous part of the 21st century education option that we are looking for all of our students, and we are very pleased that this program was successful as it was. And I want to specifically thank all the teachers that worked with them on it because they did an outstanding job. I'd like to thank Mr. Cyphers for giving it some direction, as well as Ms. Height, because I think they were a little daunted at the task when it first came up, but they did an outstanding job. So thank you. Also on the recognitions, we're going to take a moment for Ms. Emily Webb from the Virginia School Board Association to come up and introduce herself.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me an opportunity just to speak with you all just for a minute or two. My name is Emily Webb. I'm the VSBA Director of Government Relations, and as VSBA staff, we try to get out into our divisions as much as possible. We are a resource for you all, so even if you don't see and hear us every day, please feel free to call us if you have any questions, if there's anything that we can do for you. Our Executive Director, Gina Patterson, is always available, as well as our VSBA President, so please feel free to utilize us, and thank you for giving me a minute just to say hello.
You're welcome.
Thank
you.
you.
Mr. Nichols, informational items.
Yes, first on our list for informational items tonight is Ms. Height, who would like to give you an update on our drug procedures, drug policy and procedures.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Nichols, board members. In keeping with updates and revisions tonight for your information and hopefully for your action, I have had the opportunity to revise the student pledge and the drug screening procedures for Mecklenburg County Public Schools. It should have been in your board packet. I have also contacted the representative of the agent that we've used in the past, and we're ready to move forward on this if it be your will this evening. I would like to make note that a couple of things that we did change, most notably the names of school board members and so forth, but on the front page, I've also added the information about where you can access this on our webpage now, because that was not there before, and have tried to put specific directions as to how you can find this information in a whole section called Athletics on our main webpage, along with information regarding concussions and Virginia High School League and just other pertinent information that I thought would be necessary. So are there any questions?
Any questions? None. Thank you, Ms. Hyde.
Thank you.
And there will be an opportunity for you to take a vote later just on making the updates. Second, we have an opportunity to talk about the budget amendment that was mentioned last month when I spoke to the board and said that as we've had discussions, we will be working with our teachers and staff and giving the 2% salary raise despite the fact that the state's pulled back on it. There's a budget amendment request that will be actually asking that you increase instruction by $114,506, which will be removed from the technology item on the category. Of course, then we will turn around and decrease the technology budget by $114,506.11, which will be moved to instruction. That's a categorical move and would have to pass by you and then go to the Board of Supervisors for their vote because they fund us categorically. I'm also letting you know with this, there will be an increase in food services that we have mentioned to the Finance Committee due to grant revision increases. And under federal, there will be an increase anticipated in federal revenues projected because of the Region 8 Staff Development Grant that had originally come in at $50,000, but I have asked for a change. We've submitted a request for a change to $150,000, and we're looking for that. We think that will be coming through, so we want to just have you vote on the amendment for that. And any questions?
None.
Okay, next, we have the opportunity for me to mention to you, let me make sure I've got my right things here. We had our first day of school today, and Dr. Majette and I had the opportunity to go around to all of the schools, and I'm very pleased to report a lot of enthusiasm among the teachers and administrators and saying that it was an excellent day. The one hitch in our giddy up, if I might call it that, is that we've known that we have some work to do at South Hill Elementary School related to the bus routing and the car pool routing. We have a lot of parents that are taking their students to school at South Hill Elementary, and the school was originally built for the buses to go in one direction and cars in the other. It's been a problem before, but we're causing an issue that the weight of the buses having been shifted over to where the cars were originally planned to go is causing considerable damage to the lot. And so with Mr. Mayhew and Mr. Dalton, we were looking at ways of trying to shift them back so that we could save ourselves the long-term maintenance issues that we have, and thought we had a plan. But as we met there this morning at 7:30 to see how that was working out, Our new plan obviously didn't work because we still have traffic that's backing up on both sides of both Plank Road and Highway 1 and 58. I'm very pleased and thankful that the South Hill Police Department showed up to help with that. They were interested. They didn't just show up because they'd been asked. They were very interested. The new South Hill Police Chief has children at South Hill Elementary School, so he has a personal investment in what we have going on. And he was able to observe what we have going on there. We came to an agreement that the change will not work, and so starting tomorrow, we will go back to the way we did things last year and come again to planning as to how we can work another arrangement. The problem with the way that we had things going on last year is that the buses are coming in that scenario in a placement that children tend to run in and out of before administrators can catch them or teachers. I know Mr. Gavin was able to see that last year and some of the dangers that poses. So we've got to do something different, and we're going to have to look and study that plan to see what it might be. But we will go back to the original plan tomorrow. Other than that, as far as I have heard from all of the other schools, the day went very well as the first day of school, and there's a lot of enthusiasm for this school year. So if any of you have questions about the first day of school, please let me know. And next, I would actually like to ask and introduce to you Mr. Randy Holmes, who's sitting in the back. Randy, stand up. Randy is a good friend of mine. We grew up together in South Hill. Randy is an architect, a very successful architect with the firm Glave and Holmes in Richmond, Virginia. His firm does not build K-12 schools. They build universities and historic sites and have won multiple awards. Mr. Holmes has been asked by Chesterfield County Public Schools, where his children have gone to school and where he resides, to work with them on a committee to study all of their building projects, which they have many of. And because of the discussion phase that after our regular meeting we will be having tonight, I have asked Randy if he would come and be available as an external expert on some of these things to be able to answer questions that the board might have. So as the public would know from the agenda, after our regular board meeting tonight, we will have a chance for the board to have a discussion, having sent our request for 2 schools to the Board of Supervisors, and the Board of Supervisors is now asking for some time to consider our proposal. I think they're planning to meet on September the 7th in their education committee and have invited their full board to that, and then we'll hear from them again. But we may have other questions for discussion, and Mr. Holmes is joining us for that piece. And Mr. Sturdivant, that's all for my report tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. We're going to continue on. At this point, I'm going to skip over Chairman's remarks, and we're going to go straight into the committee reports, starting with A, Joint Education and Capital Improvement Committee. Is there anything for that tonight?
Nothing, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Mr. Edwards?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Nichols, members of the board. I've got several items, some to bring to your attention and some just to bring you up to speed on. Since our last meeting, more capital improvement projects have been completed. We were able to take, we had some tile left over and some time left over, so we went to Chase City Elementary School and replaced all of their ceiling tile and painted their grid in their original building, which is the front hall and the main hall going into the office. And that looks really good, matter of fact. La Crosse Elementary drainage in front of the school, back of the school, and the gym area was completed as early as this past Saturday, right before the kids came back. The awning at La Crosse Elementary School connecting the new wing and the old wing has been completed, and that is beautiful. If y'all up in that area, please stop by and take a look at that. They did Lake Gaston Awning did an excellent job with that. They also replaced the Clarksville Elementary School awnings in front where the buses drop off there. And at this time, I'd like to take a moment and at Clarksville Elementary School, it started off as a very small project. But as you can ask Ms. Dalton, by the time they were through, it turned out to be a rather large project. The company, construction company Hensel Phelps, they're the ones developing building number 7 at Microsoft. They donated all the time, material, and supplies and paid for it out of their pocket, donated anywhere between, I'm just estimating, $12,000 and $15,000 worth of sidewalks. And they were out there putting these sidewalks in the heat of summer. So I'd like to just publicly thank Hensel Phelps at this time and ask everyone, please give them a round of applause because they were well deserved. Moving on, I'd just like to give you an informative update as far as our HVAC situation throughout the division, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Moore's Mechanical completed their inspection of the boilers within the division last Friday. I met with them today and reviewed the report. They will be getting a price list together for us by the first part of next week on the projects that they have that we want to look at. We've also been assessing the ongoing HVAC controls and equipment problems at South Hill Elementary School. I've met or spoken with several representatives from Train on what our most reliable and cost-effective solution to these issues may be. I hope to have received some, if not most of the estimates by the first part of next week, and that at that time we'll meet with the Capital Improvement Committee and we'll discuss our options as far as the repairs go. We've also been contending with constant AC calls for ongoing 2 weeks now. I do not think it looks any better for the years to come as we're dealing with older equipment that has reached its life expectancy, so to speak. So this is, like I said, just to make you aware. Our 3 main goals at MCPS Maintenance Department is to provide a safe and comfortable atmosphere for our kids and staff, return our facilities equipment to a much-needed, reliable state, and not to have 1 day of school lost to operational issues. I appreciate your time, and I'll answer any questions at this time that you may have.
Any questions, board members? If not, thank you.
You're welcome.
Moving on to B, Finance Committee.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the Finance Committee met Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock. We reviewed the bills with Ms. Pfeffer, and they were to our satisfaction. We do recommend they be paid. We also talked about the categorical transfers of $114,000, and we, as a committee, also are in favor of that move. And the increase in federal funds that we are expecting, we're glad to see any increase from any kind of funds that we could receive. And that is the finance report.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Any questions? Any other board members pertaining to finance? If not, we're going to move on to C, Gifted and Talented, Special Ed, Health and Family Committee.
Nothing to report.
Thank you, Ms. Garner. Item D, CT, Career and Technical Education Committee.
We have a CT Advisory Committee scheduled for August 29th at 4 p.m. And then I think Mr. Cyphers was also going to tell us about a couple of new things.
Good evening again, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Nichols, and board members. We also have established a CT Automotive Advisory Committee. Part of the requirements when we go through our NATEF recertification process and review process, we have to have a committee established. And that committee is comprised of folks who are members of the community as far as the auto dealerships and auto parts stores, things of that nature, as well as a representative from Southside Virginia Community College who teaches their current automotive and diesel program. And we will have our first meeting on Wednesday, August the 31st at 6 o'clock, and that's at Parkview High School. And during that time, we will also go through and look at the process as far as the review process, and also go through and see through a series of checklists, because there are a series of checklists that you have to do and actually make sure you have all those parts and equipment. And thanks to the Perkins grant, what money we had left over last year, we were able to purchase the rest of the needed equipment, which was a little over $13,000 that it required for us to be up to speed, so we would be able to complete the NATEF review. Also, starting in later this month or early in September, we will start sending out surveys to our middle school as well as our high school students. We're looking at the possibility of establishing several new CTE programs that will start next fall in 2017. And some of the programs include pharmacy technician, cosmetology, energy fundamentals. They have Microsoft IT Academy, the 911 dispatcher, expanding the electricity and HVAC program, personal training, phlebotomy, and mechatronics. And those programs will be a combination of either the staff at Parkview or Bluestone. It will also include partnerships between Southside Virginia Community College and also the Southern Virginia Higher Education Center in South Boston. Y'all have any questions?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me. Are they, how will, I know you're planning these ahead. Are they going, you going to split these between the two high schools, or are we going to again be busing to the eastern end of the county on those kids?
It'll depend on the program. For example, the pharmacy tech, we just can use our current nurse aid instructors, and we have nurse aid programs at both Parkview and Bluestone. And what we can do as nurse aid is we can open that up to the 11th graders, and then we can let the 12th graders do the pharmacy tech, so that we can house directly at both schools. The cosmetology program will be a partnership through Southside, and that's held at the SD Center at Chase City. They have all their equipment there, and we could do the labs there and then bring them back to the respective schools for computer time, because it does require some computer time, which requires hardwired computers. So we can look at that. The IT Academy, Southside Virginia Community College, the Lake Country Center in South Hill is setting up an IT Academy, and that should be functioning by spring of 2017. So our Parkview kids could go to the IT Academy on the South Hill side, and we're working with the Southern Virginia Higher Education Center in South Boston to take our Bluestone kids on that side. The dispatcher can be at either one of the schools as well. We can do that as well. We actually have a meeting with Michelle Green-Wright, who is the Health and Medical Services Director for the Department of Education. We have a meeting with her later this month, and she's going to go over some of the programs with us, as well as personal training. That can be housed at either one of our schools, and all we would do for the personal training is we need to get our current health and PE teachers certified for that. Electricity and HVAC is currently offered at South Hill for the Lake Country Center. We can also offer that at the Keysville Center for Southside for the folks on the Bluestone end. And then phlebotomy can be done the same way. Phlebotomy can be done at either of the schools. We would just need to make sure we had an instructor, or either we could go through Southside as well. And then the mechatronics will be at the Higher Ed Center in South Boston.
Hold on, diesel mechanics. How many kids are we transporting right now? Do you, maybe you don't know today since it's the first day of school. From Bluestone to Sally. How many are from Parkview taking it, and how many from Bluestone are being transported every day?
I'm not sure the exact number of the Parkview kids who are in the auto mechanics, but I know when I was visiting today the schools, when I went to the 4th block, Mr. Woods had 17 kids from Bluestone that were in the automotive program. And all the Bluestone students come over in the 4th block for automotive.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Board members, any other questions? Mr. Honeycutt?
I guess, yes, I do have one question. Talking about the busing issue, are these, I mean, these students that have their driver's license, are they able to drive over, or do they have to ride a bus over?
Mr. Nichols?
Currently, we are expecting them to ride the buses. Yes. Are we not? Just like we...
Some of the students ride the buses. I know when I was previously at Southside, they do have some of the students in the programs at Southside. They drove back and forth.
Okay, so the students that do have a driver's license have an opportunity to drive to the class.
Yes, sir. I know in the past, when at Southside, they were previously allowed to drive.
Okay.
Are they insured by us when they're in their own cars? When they leave a high school, Bluestone, going to Parkview, are they insured by us, or do they break for the day and then we reinstate them when they get to Parkview?
That
I don't know about the liability.
That I would have to check on.
That's something that we can research with Mr. Nichols.
Yeah, I'd just like to know.
I do have a question. Mr. Honeycutt, do you have anything else?
No, sir.
I have a question about, you said Mega Electronics, that's going to be where?
Mechatronics. Currently, the Southern Virginia Higher Education Center in South Boston offers that. And that's a very in-demand program. We actually took our cyber camp kids there and we did a tour. And one of the gentlemen talking said that one of the students who completed the program, they were actually getting ready to hire them for a company in Emporia, and their starting salary was $100,000. Okay. And that was usually a couple of semesters. South Boston just obtained their Siemens Level 2 certification, which is a very big thing because for them to be able to obtain their Level 2 certification, they have to actually send a representative to Germany. And that's the only way they can obtain their Level 2 certification. And we will be more or less looking at them doing like an introductory program, and then they will be able to continue and do more once they finish.
What will be the plan to get our kids that have an interest in it from Parkview to go to South Boston?
We are planning on doing some field trips with the students. We're going to send out the survey to them and see what they're interested in. And one of the things we want to do, for example, last year we took a group of the kids who wanted to visit the Occupational Technical Center at Fort Pickett. We took them to Blackstone to see the diesel tech truck driving and the lineman program. We want to do the same thing as well. We want to give them information as far as what the job entails, what type of training that will be entailed, how long it will take, and then a median salary they can expect to receive once they start, and as well as the job outlook for those positions.
After the field trip,
Yes, sir.
they decide they want to attend.
Yes, sir.
How do we compensate as far as classroom hours coming from Parkview going to South Boston?
That's something we'll have to figure out. We're just in the early stages, just exploring with the students to see. We actually will have to meet with the South Boston Center as well to determine, but we're just in the early stages trying to get an idea of what students are interested in.
And you mentioned some of the other programs, a fourth block. That's typically the block where our kids are going to have to go from one school to the other, that last block?
Currently, I know the automotive program at Parkview is at fourth block.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I might add, in some of the preliminary talks we've had with the Higher Ed Center in South Boston, they have talked about having buses that they would make available to move students back and forth at their expense because they're trying to build the program.
I understand, but they would have to get out of one class early to go. Well, that's something we can talk about later.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Cyphers.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, moving on to E, Athletics Discipline Committee.
Nothing.
Okay, there's nothing to report with that. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone signed up for public input?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
At this time, matters may be publicly brought to the attention of the school board and administration. Public comments at board meetings are just one of many avenues for communication, and the board recognizes and appreciates the importance of input from and communication with the public we represent. The public is invited to sign up to speak. The clerk of the school board will write down your name, contact information, and the topic that you wish to speak about. The public is allowed up to 6 minutes at most meetings to express their views. Please respect that time limitation. It will be enforced. Please understand that it may not be possible to immediately respond to questions. As a reminder, it is inappropriate at public meetings to make personal attacks, to be defamatory, or to disparage individuals or identifiable groups. Again, we welcome and appreciate your input. Prior to beginning your comment, please state your name to the board. Mr. Yancey?
My name is Edward Yancey. I'm from the 1st District. District 1 includes Palmer Springs, Epps Forks, and Southside, South Virginia, South Clarksville. Epps Forks, Sudan, South Clarksville do not have a mayor community development committee to write long articles in the newspaper to sway voters. Palmer Springs has 778 registered voters. South Clarksville and Epps Forks have 1,689 registered voters. Mr. Ritchie is my board representative who lives in Palmer Springs and within minutes of South Hill, and has voted with the eastern part of the county for 4 schools, 2 east and 2 west. Even though the majority of my constituents, or our constituents, are in western end of the county that are in favor of one consolidated school centrally located. The school system chose a consultant to evaluate the cost of building one complex versus remodeling 60-year-old schools that will never be able to meet the educational needs of Mecklenburg County. It has been suggested that the schools be built for less money than the consultant presented. So why did we pay $75,000 for a consultant of evaluate in the first place? They suggested one complex be less expensive. The steering committee has chosen to evaluate. The steering committee was chosen to evaluate one complex versus having 4 schools. They spent many days discussing the best educational system for Mecklenburg County to meet the first century. They chose one school consolidation. The superintendent, whom the board hired, suggested one complex. I do not understand why this school board has turned on these people, the steering committee, the superintendent, and the building consultant. It has been suggested by the school board members that all classes can be taught online. Stated in the future, all school curriculum could be taught online, not needing a high school. So why are we talking about building a school? This is not what I believe people believe in. The east end of the county says that the majority of the people want separate schools, but the majority does not always win. The majority, just for reference sake, I'm going to use the word minority. We do not have a minority problem in Mecklenburg County now. There are us and them. This I do not want to put with us with them. What do you mean by them? As I have stated before, the majority does not always win. If we use the word we is used for one consolidated school, it will stop the words us, them, east, and west. And we will have a school system that is Southside Virginia, Mecklenburg County, that will meet the educational needs of our children for the 21st century. I would like to say that the ball is in your court. And if you don't come to your senses and decide on one school versus 2 or 3 schools or 4 schools, this thing could be delayed for months, if not years. So wake up, let's have a new school, one consolidated school. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone else?
No, sir.
We're going to move on to the action phase. Get a motion that the school board approves the minutes of the regular school board meeting held on July 19, 2016.
So moved.
We have a motion for Mr. Honeycutt. Do we have a second? Second for Mr. Palmer. Roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturdivant?
Yes. Item B, that the school board approves the minutes of the special school board meeting held on July 26, 2016. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion for Mr. Edwards, second for Ms. Garner. Roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturdivant?
Yes. Item C, that the school board approves the payment of the bills.
Mr. Chairman, the Finance Committee met and has suggested that we pay the bills as presented.
We have a motion and a second from the Finance Committee. Roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturdivant?
Yes. Item D, personnel. Under item D, there's still some information about the last 2 items that we discussed in the back. What we're going to do, we're going to go back into closed session at the end of action, and we're going to have some clarification on that, and the board will come back and address it. So each and every member is aware of what's going on. So what we're voting on right now, board, under personnel D, is going to be everything except the last 2 items that related to, I believe, the Parkview and the Bluestone issue. Okay, do you have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion for Mr. Edwards and a second for Mr. Honeycutt. Roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Sturdivant?
Yes. That item, when we come back, board members, is going to be item E under additional personnel recommendation. Moving on to item F, that the school board approves the revised 2016-2017 drug policy. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion for Mr. Palmer, second for Mr. Edwards. Roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
No.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes. Item G, I believe I have a recommendation from the Finance Committee.
Yes, Finance Committee does recommend that we approve the budget amendment.
Thank you, Finance Committee. Ms.
Second.
Bailey? Roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes. Item H, student matter. That the school board approves the superintendent recommendation regarding student matter 2016-2017-02. We have a motion?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion for Mr. Edwards. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second for Ms. Garner. Roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes. Under item I, which is a personnel matter, that personnel matter is still pending. That information can be brought to us so we can make a decision. We can discuss that once we get back in closed session. Maybe we have an answer. At this point, we're going to go into item 11, which is our work session. This is going to be a discussion of the building of option 4 for the school's facilities plan. Mr. Nichols.
Yes, sir. Tonight, we have the opportunity for the board members to raise questions that they might have related to the various options that were presented by the steering committee of the Joint Education Board. And as I mentioned earlier, we have Mr. Holmes as an architect who should be available to answer some of the questions without having anyone concerned about any prior feelings that he might have one way or the other. So I'll be happy to answer any that I can as well as superintendent.
Yes, as we continue, this board, as everyone knows, voted for option 4 by majority. Under that option 4 plan, option 4 was a consolidated high school, middle school complex on the Bluestone end, a new high school at the Parkview end, and a renovated old high school converting it to the middle school. That was under option 4. As we got that information from the steering committee. This is going to give the board members an opportunity to discuss publicly what their idea of a hybrid plan. I think I've heard from board members saying that under the option 4, which was a complete renovation of the high school, maybe there are some other ideas out there. So we'll give each board member an opportunity to talk about those things. Any board member would like to start the conversation?
I have a few questions.
Mr. Campbell.
Can he come up and answer
Yes.
those?
Mr. Holmes?
He's like,
Make sure you talk up.
I can't hear. I just have some questions on these prices.
Yes, sir.
They're saying that a Bluestone high school, middle school complex is going to cost anywhere from $77 to $80 million. Is that accurate from what you?
Mr. Campbell, for benefit of clarity, Mr. Holmes
don't know.
has a copy of the booklet that you have. Can
Yeah.
you tell him which page that is that he wants to
Oh,
refer to?
that's page 49.
Could you repeat that again? I didn't understand what you just said.
You're talking about $80 million to build a new Bluestone high school, middle school complex in option 4. $80 million.
Right, okay.
I guess my question is, if that's accurate, how can a consolidated school be twice that size for an additional $20 million? The numbers don't make sense to me. Maybe I'm just not getting it. But if you build one to house currently 900 students, close to 1,000 students, how do you build the same type complex to house 2,700 students for an additional $20 million.
Just so I'm tracking with you, the page 49, you said, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And it's the option 1, 2, 3, 4 facility options cost summary?
Yes.
And so option 4, new high school, middle school construction, 68 million to 72 million.
Yes, sir.
At 221 construction cost, building and site, and then construction alone for a total project cost of 77 to 80 million. And I think if you look at option 2, the question is how can you do a full school for another $20 million? I think one of the assumptions that may be relying on is a full school has the advantage of not having to duplicate things like 2 full kitchens, 2 full gymnasiums, 2 full auditoriums. Those kinds of components could be combined, and so there is some savings. I can't tonight stand and tell you exactly how that 20 million difference is quantified.
Because those areas you're talking about would have to be twice as large. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Well, I wouldn't say that the kitchen would have to be twice as large just to serve twice as many students. I mean,
but the cafeteria would be.
The seating area, depending upon how it staged, and I don't know the assumptions this report has, but generally, if you're talking about 1,400 to 1,600 students is what the combined high school would be looking at.
No, it'd be 2,700 students.
Is that right?
Combined.
That's what it would be built to hold.
Between the middle and the high.
But at the opening day, would that be the number? Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, they're looking at building it so that there would be room for some growth and to be able to house that many.
Okay. All right. Well, I haven't had a chance to digest this. I just got this weekend. So to answer your question as best I can, I don't know how the savings could necessarily result in only another $20 million, although there are savings in site cost and infrastructure cost and overlap of facilities that could recognize a reasonable degree of savings. Now, whether it's only $20 million to do the whole thing, I can't here tonight answer that question.
Yeah. I mean, do those numbers seem to be realistic?
They do. The $221 a square foot, the national average is about $235 for a high school. The regional average, which we are in Virginia, which is Virginia, Virginia. The numbers I have are 2015 numbers, but Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, and West Virginia, that region, the average is about $225 a square foot. So the 221 number seems to be a reasonable number to be carrying for high school construction.
And is that on the high end?
No, that's
is that just a neutral?
That is the region's median average. So the upper quartile is about 300 and I have the number in my briefcase, about 360. The lower quartile is like 190.
The reason why I say that, I'm going to refer to an email that I got today, and I sent it to all the board members, so you all should have it. Yeah, I forwarded it when I got here, so you should have it if you look in your email. There's a new school going up in Suffolk, the middle school. They're building it for 900 students. And they've got a completion cost. It'll be actually completed in the fall of 2018. This one school for 900 students, and the cost on it is about $200 a square foot, $25.3 million total cost of this one particular project. So that's why I asked if that 235 was on the higher end. And this is just one of many examples that I have throughout the state of Virginia that are under construction right now as we speak.
Could I ask a question of you?
Yes, sir.
Does that include athletic fields?
That's the whole shebang.
Does that include athletic
Yes,
fields?
sir.
So they're not building on the site they're at now. They're building on a new site.
This is on a new site.
New athletic fields?
This is a new site, yes, sir. This one particular one that I'm talking about right now. And this is the new Suffolk Middle School in Suffolk, Virginia.
Okay. Have you seen the new elementary school they built right outside of Suffolk?
And I haven't seen that.
You ought to go see it.
Is it on 58?
It is.
I've seen
It's not very pretty. It's a big box with a shingle roof on it. It's got a 20-year shingle roof on it. You can build something as cheap as you want to. I'm a builder. I can build you a house for $80 a square foot, or I can build you a real house for about $130 a square foot.
Well, the specs that I'm seeing here, I mean, it's very state-of-the-art, CTE, new fields, auditorium, green spaces.
Who's the architect?
RMM, architect.
But the difference in per square foot price isn't that big, so it seems to me that the big difference has to be in the size of the school.
Yes, that's correct.
The number of square feet. So they're not skimping on price per square foot. On quality, they're somehow making it smaller.
Because of the numbers, I would assume it would be it'd be number driven.
Yeah, but they have an 800, here, I'm looking at this, an 800 student school for 25 million. You could build 2 of those, then it would be 50 million, right?
Correct.
Not 100 million.
Correct. And again, this is just one example that I've got. I've got many, but I forwarded you all because these were some of the realistic. And the reason why I've sent you all this tonight is because this is actually, 2 of these are under construction right now to be completed in the fall of 2018.
I think I've got the same numbers you've got. The building cost was $22,460. The site cost was $2,715,000. But if you look at the high school numbers,
yes, sir,
the site cost is generally jumps up. I'm looking at recent high school cost for site, and they range from 2 to 19 million.
See, one of the site costs we already own. We are behind Parkview. We already own 60-plus acres for a new site. So that's money the county doesn't have to incur. We already own that property.
But I think one of the differences, middle school to high school, the cost per square foot numbers.
Yes,
if you're
sir.
talking about total project versus just building.
Okay.
The site cost in total project can be a factor because of football stadiums and other things that come into play that can, a larger bus loop, larger parking area because you got cars, you got asphalt parking lot that's larger. Those factors would make a high school number jump higher. So I was not focused. I've got numbers from the Virginia Department of Education on a number of recent projects over the last 3 years. The numbers that you all have been talking about seem to be in line with the numbers in the report that Mr. Nichols shared with me this weekend seem to be in line with the numbers that the Department of Education are getting for recent high schools. I know Huguenot High School in Richmond, which is an urban area, more expensive, but that was $245 a square foot. But that's a 2-story building. The Stafford High School, which was built in 2013-14, that was $213 a square foot. And then Heritage High School in Lynchburg that just opened today, I think, or this academic year, was built for $238 a square foot. That's an all-new high school. I'm not sure how much site work is in that number. I don't have, well, I do have the, I can look it up. I don't know how that breaks out between site and building.
Are you familiar with, I've also visited a school last week, the end of last week, in Hopewell, Virginia, just renovated their high school.
Oh, I'm not familiar with that.
Yes, sir. It was an $11 million project. It was an existing school already standing. And they added 14,000 square feet onto the building in Hopewell City Public Schools. I was able to tour that facility. And again, the reason why I wanted to tour that one is because of the idea of renovating Parkview. And that was an $11.2 million project, again, adding an additional 14,000 new square feet.
I think I've got numbers on that one as well. When it just opened?
Yes, sir. I believe this was their first year, she said, in that.
I don't think so. I think it was.
Was it last year?
Can I make a statement real quick?
Before that.
Gavin, I'm not going to get on you here in public real bad, but we are, as a board, individually, we're not supposed to be talking to these architects. If you do, you're jeopardizing their opportunity to bid on these projects. RRMM, and I know who did Hopewell, man, you don't want to go there. Yeah, I'm serious.
Let me also say that I was at a conference with a bunch of other people from the VSBA, and I was just standing in the lobby, just Just Wanda and I talking, saying, look what we've got going on. I didn't commit to anything.
I know, but your email doesn't say that. You're talking to them every day, and we're not supposed to be.
I've only referred to her twice.
We got a committee that's supposed to be doing that, and so does the Board of Supervisors. And I think if we go beyond the scope of the Board of Supervisors and our committee here, the Educational Committee, I think you're stepping outside.
I wanted to make sure that when I spoke in public that I had real facts, that I wasn't speaking out of turn.
Yeah, but you don't know because you don't have real facts. These are just...
So why is this gentleman standing here?
Because he doesn't build schools. He has the right to stand here and give us some numbers.
He's affiliated with schools. He just said in Chesterfield County.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Palmer.
The facts, the figures that we're receiving here in this folder, is that totally for our area, or is that for the Fairfax and surrounding areas further away from us? And I can go to a Fauquier County or a Loudoun County, and my figures would be totally different than here in good old Southside Virginia.
Well, I agree with you that good old Southside Virginia would have its own set of numbers. I would anticipate that the consultants who put together the study took that into consideration. I'd also agree with Mr. Edwards that when you begin to talk in very general terms about cost per square foot numbers, there is a recognition that you're talking about averages, about projects that haven't had a defined quality, haven't had a defined site, haven't had a defined scope of work. And so you have to look at those numbers as very general. And so when you say, well, 225 versus 221 versus 235, these are just guiding numbers. I know in Chesterfield County, and we're faced with budget overruns that we're hitting, and because these projects oftentimes get capital outlay based off of some square foot number, there is a process that has to be undergone to further refine and focus. And Mr. Edwards knows that the construction process looks at the design at various phases, or at least cost estimators. Architects use cost estimators. Sometimes they use contractors, depending upon what the procurement method is. But you're continually refining those numbers and working to those budgets. But there are three things that play into this. There's quality, there's time, and there's cost. And those things have to be balanced, because the longer you wait, the higher the cost is likely to go. The market itself can change cost variables, and that can affect quality, so that you can build a building for $190 a square foot. I mean, it's certainly possible, and we all know that you can build a building for less money. The question is, how will that building serve you over time? What's going to be the life cycle cost? And that's why on that page 49, that's that whole section on life cycle cost, to kind of weigh in those factors and to realize that you might be able to deliver something that's new and exciting on the day it opens, but how will it serve over time? And those are factors that you all are aware of and have to wrestle with. But that's where this cost per square foot is a guide, not something to fixate on and say, well, we're only going to spend $225 unless you've talked about the other variables that go with it. Is that, I don't know if that's helpful or not.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Sorry,
Ms. Bailey.
I think what I appreciate, thank you, Mr. Holmes, for coming, first of all, and we appreciate your expertise and sharing it with us. I believe that our citizens, as well as our supervisors, and I would hope that every member of the school board, we would be conscious of what it's going to cost to erect these buildings. And I've heard many supervisors say we don't need a Taj Mahal. And I think we need to keep that in mind when we are talking about the scope of this project. And we know that from our experience at South Hill Elementary that curved walls typically don't work so well. And we can learn from that project. It's the only school we've built in the last 60 years. And while it's very attractive, it may not have been the best design that we could have chosen. So I think in terms of building it modestly and something that will serve our purpose. Is certainly in our best interest to do so. But we're getting ahead of ourselves because one of the things that Mr. Hart has reminded us of in some emails to superintendent and others is that he thinks one way that we can move forward is to drill down deeper into the study options in terms of scope, programming, and cost, and get to a schematic design level so that then we can have tighter figures to work from. And I think that's our job as a school board. We have voted for a two-school model. And I think it's our job to come together, talk about what it is that we feel is realistic to do, and see, as we drill down deeper, as Mr. Hart has suggested, can we make this work? And so the first thing he asked us to look at is the scope of this project. And so when we look at scope, that means that we look at Parkview High School. How much do we want to renovate there? And it also, we need to look at the size of the buildings that Hart has recommended versus what is realistic for this county. And we can start wherever y'all want to start. But I think an enrollment discussion, we need to have that. And do we need to build two equally sized high schools? Because that's what we voted to do. And is that necessary? Is it achievable to even do that? And that's some things we need to talk about. And that comes down to ADM and how many people are living in what areas. And personally, I'm not willing to bus students from the South Hill area to make these schools equal, because I don't think that that's necessary. I think we can deliver equal education and equal curriculum without doing that. So that's...
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Also, some information you mentioned that the architect had mentioned. Just so it's clear, under option 4 with the study, only had one new athletic complex in the budget for Bluestone High School, as the existing one would remain at Parkview High School. So it was never really talked about in public. Bluestone High School will be a complete new high school, middle school complex with new athletic facilities. On the Parkview end, they would have to use the athletic facilities that they currently have, and or someone suggested maybe that they could use like Bunny Field or Parker Park as a substitute to building the new athletic complex. There's also has been a question from board members as to how much are they really going to do to Parkview High School. And if some of the board members want to bring that up, are we talking a complete renovation, or board members, are we talking about a partial renovation? For example, has been suggested maybe putting a new roof, new windows, and central air and heat. Is that what we're thinking? So that the public knows what the vision is. Under option 4, which we voted on, was a complete renovation. However, due to the cost, that cost is being shaved down, just trying to bring it down. So board members, what are your thoughts at Parkview High School? Are you looking at a complete renovation, or are you thinking a partial renovation to include a new roof, windows, and new heat and air? What are your thoughts?
I have a point. Of course, I don't know anything about construction. I've only been on this board 13 years. When we're running clean, when we're trying to clean the pipes in the bottom in these schools under the floors, and they try to unstop the sewer lines, they're pulling back mud. That tells me one thing: there's no pipe left there. The pipes have decayed. They're all under the floors. All the pipes are gone. You're going to have new plumbing, folks. That's all new water lines, new sewer lines. You don't have sewer at Parkview High School either, by the way. You're going to have to pull that down the road from South Hill. That's not cheap. If we build a house like the schematic was that was drawn, the new school was going to go where the athletic field was. The estimate on putting a new athletic field is $8.5 million. If you take all these numbers and start adding them up, now if you don't want to put new plumbing under your school, what's going to happen in about 2 years after this is finished is you're going to go back and cry to the Board of Supervisors to give you another $4 or $5 million, and now you got the kids in the school. You can't get them out of the school. They got to walk on the pipes. So we've got to use our head about what's happening, and that's what's happening because this is in our middle schools, and let me bring another point up. As soon as we finish these high schools, whether we build 2, 4, 6, we have 3 elementary schools right now with the same problems under their floors, and we're probably looking at another $2 to $4 million per school. So we're going to go back and ask this Board of Supervisors in 3 or 4 years for another 12, 15 more million. Ain't going to happen, folks.
Well, I think, Mr. Edwards, part of this work session is to publicly say what our ideas are. So that way it can go to the Board of Supervisors so they know what are we looking at. You know, they have to understand that part of the cost is when we just throw the athletic facilities. Parkview isn't getting new athletic facilities. Also, we need to talk about from this board, are we talking about what are we going to renovate at Parkview High School? What are your thoughts? Because we have to present something to that board, because the only thing they have now is option 4 as through this study.
Right.
So let's have a dialogue about what kind of ideas we have.
Well, one thing I just need clarified first, and maybe I could ask the architect while he's here. The calculated gross area per student and the estimates we got was about 200 square feet per student. Then the big difference between the numbers that you have are not the per square foot numbers, it's the actual size of the school. And this is something you probably don't have that I'm looking at. This was something that the consultants gave us early on about the school, and it came out to 200 square feet. This is for an 800 student high school. The things that I'm looking at that those projects that were just completed, those are closer to $150 per 150 square feet per student. And of course that's what's making the big difference in the numbers. The numbers per square foot aren't that different. That's not, I don't think, the issue here. I think the price issue comes down to how many square feet
per child
they're allowing per child.
Okay.
So I guess
Just
what
so
I'm
you know-
asking is what is a more reasonable number?
Well, the statewide average in 2013-14 was 158 square feet. Now, that's 2013-14. Let me give you 14-15. The statewide average in 16-17 for high school was 255, but the problem with that, it was only one school in the statistics, so I can't think that that represents a very wide spectrum. Let me see if I can find you the 2015.
And while you're looking for that, I guess part of the question is we have to decide how many square feet per student we're looking at, how much space per student versus some schools may have less, some may have more. And then we have to decide what do we want, how many square feet per child as a basis. And that would
Statewide average in 2014-15 was 163 square feet. So
Okay.
So, you know,
So that's not all that different than that. But
It's not that
But when you
far
say,
off.
yeah, but when you say 200 square feet, that's a 25% increase.
That is
That's tens of, that's millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of difference in just the square foot per child.
Yeah.
So I think before, we need to know how big these schools need to be.
how much space per child. Also, and what are the thoughts? What are you looking at actually doing? We know Bluestone High School, middle school, everything's going to be new on that end.
Yeah.
But the new Parkview will be new. But what are we looking at doing to the old Parkview High School?
Well, Ms. Sturdivant, when you look at what our average daily membership is at Parkview Middle School, last year it was 618. We have 618 students at Parkview Middle School. The capacity at Parkview High School, the current Parkview High School, is 887. So we have more than enough room.
Square footage? Room, capacity, building capacity.
At Parkview High School. And certainly the sewer issue needs to be addressed. And there are localities all over the nation who deal with collapsed sewer pipes and relining those things. It's done on a daily basis. It's done in our towns. And so certainly that's something that needs to be done. And you know, I'm not a builder, but there are many localities who do this on a regular basis. Old concrete pipes that need to be relined.
Are we looking at keeping the building as is, no additions?
With a capacity of 887, and you're moving 618 students
Okay.
into it, I would say there's probably parts of the building that we wouldn't even have to use.
So are we looking at new roofs, new windows? What are we looking at doing?
I would say sewer, heating, cooling, and ventilation, a cafeteria expansion, because the cafeteria now could easily be expanded because of where it sits in that building, bleachers in the gym, roofing where needed. We have a separate roof fund for that with millions of dollars sitting in it. And maybe, since we're doing heating, cooling, and ventilation, partial window and door replacements.
Partial?
Partial. Because there are sections of the building that we may not even need to use. So again, this is a scope issue. We got to determine, what wings we. Certainly the Votech wing in the back, which was built in the 70s, that doesn't need any improvement. That's a two-floor building. I was just in it last Thursday. The teachers that were moved there from the old building feel like, they've gotten a step up because it's a nice building. And so these are some of the things that I would think are important. Now, my question is, when you make those kinds of improvements, Mr. Holmes, when you do the kinds of things that I just talked about, does that require any asbestos removal?
Most likely, yes, because improvements to, it has to do with the percentage, but when you submit plans to do like a major HVAC renovation and so forth, typically that is of a scale and size that will require it to come up to code.
Okay.
Bathroom improvements, those sorts of things will, and generally if you're going to do renovations, particularly if you're going to convert it from a high school to a middle school, it'll need to come up to code, and code will require them to remove asbestos if it's known to be in the building.
Okay. All of it, or in the portions that you are working?
Typically, you'll be required to either remove it or encapsulate. If there's an area that's not going to be used and there's a way to encapsulate, you can encapsulate as opposed to remove. But you can't leave it where it can be exposed.
Mm-hmm. I just read in Hanover County at Atlee High School, which is not a new school. It's been around for a while. They're going to replace their heating and air and ventilation for less than $6 million, and that is a much larger school than what we're looking at Parkview High School.
What year is that, Atlee?
My guess was probably late 60s or 70s, but I can't testify to that.
I don't know myself.
Okay, I'll address one other thing. Most of our schools, when they were built in the 60s, used a homosode base under the roofing, and that's asbestos. But anyway, I mean, you can encapsulate it upside down. And we've got floor tile on the floors that is asbestos, so we cover it up with VA tile, vinyl composition, VCT. So we got asbestos there. I mean, until we do an assessment on a school, we'll never know how much it costs to renovate. I mean, we paid a guy $75,000 to go look at the school, and he brought people down here that knew what they were looking for, and that's the reason he came up with renovations on the 4 schools, leaving them where they were, was right at $80 million. So if you divide that, each one of them $20 million apiece. So, you're talking. You're talking about $40 million or over $20 million to renovate that school, and I don't think that included athletic facilities and that type of thing.
But that was a complete renovation, Mr. Edwards.
I have a question.
Ms. Garner.
As a professional, if you're going to renovate an old building, would you recommend doing piecemeal renovations, or would you recommend doing all of it at one time so you would not have to go back and do it a second time?
In the abstract, because the answer to that question oftentimes depends upon a lot of variables. And we have done both. On higher education projects, we're constantly renovating buildings in a piecemeal fashion because of the need to accommodate students, the need to accommodate usability of the buildings ongoing, things like that. I would say that if I had my choice, renovation all at once, if the budget can do it, because piecemeal is always more expensive because you're remobilizing the contractor over and over again every time you come back and do a piece of it. And there's a cost involved in that. There's a time involved in that, and that time is money because escalation in cost. You know, sometimes construction prices go down when we hit a recession, but unless we can count on that, typically they go up. Now, they're not, Mr. Edwards, I'm not sure what you're seeing, but we're seeing them increase, but not double-digit inflation, but there's definitely inflation. So piecemealing means that if this project's not going to start for another 2 years, I've got to add that escalation into it as opposed to doing it now. So not knowing other factors and variables that could very well sway me the other way, I would say in the abstract, if I can get it done at one time and get it up to a reasonable level of service and a reasonable level of code compliance and a reasonable level of functional ability and not have to go back in for, say, 5 years, you're probably, all things being equal, better off to go that route.
Okay. Board members.
Can I ask him
Mr.
a
Campbell.
question as a professional? To get the most bang for your buck by this study is to go with a consolidated school. That's what you understand, right?
That's what I understand.
Now, is it smarter to go out and buy land or put this consolidated school on land that you already own?
Well, obviously, if you can find land that you already own that doesn't, that actually is the right acreage and the right location.
Well, I mean, we're going to have to buy some either way.
Right.
But if you already own 60 acres and you only have to buy another 100 instead of buying 160, that's cheaper, right?
Yes, sir.
And through your experience, is it cheaper to move 1,400 kids 10 minutes down the road or 900 kids 10 extra minutes down the road?
If I understand the question, is it cheaper to move 1,400 kids 10 minutes down the road or 900 kids 10 minutes down the road? I mean, simple math would argue that it's probably cheaper to move less students down the road.
So economically, all the feelings out the window, the best thing for Mr. Nichols to get what he wants, everybody to be happy would be build a consolidated school at Parkview High School.
Yeah, that will never happen.
Well, actually,
I can't believe you brought that up.
Okay, board members, each board member has an opportunity to express their views.
Exactly.
What Mr. Campbell has suggested is possibly going back to the idea of a consolidated high school, middle school complex. This board has voted on option 4, and that's the purpose of this workshop. The purpose of this is to express the purpose of this is to express our views, to see whether or not we can come up with a consensus. As we're getting through this process, now we're going from the 2 schools, or maybe coming back to a consolidated school, but then the question comes to location. But board members, we have to talk about what are we actually going to ask or present to the Board of Supervisors. Currently, we voted on option 4. The supervisor will have an option of saying, yes, we're going to support it, or no. If they choose not to, based on what we've talked about, such as a partial renovation to Parkview, not using certain wings, or it may come back to a consolidation, then the next question would be where. So, individually, Mr. Campbell, do you have more?
Yes.
Okay.
My whole point of that was, before I was laughed at by fellow board members, was everybody's thinking that we want 2 schools just because we don't want to be in Boynton. Well, I just suggested the most economical, the most cheapest, the most appropriate for what our superintendent wants, and I was laughed at because it was going to be in South Hill. That is the only difference in the consolidated school being in Boynton and a consolidated school being in South Hill is 10 minutes down the road.
I think the question we also have to look at is I think you have 60 acres. The question with a high school, middle school complex of that size,
It takes 160. I've already asked.
And I'll
It would
apologize
take-
to you. I apologize.
Okay,
In
it would
public.
take, thank you, Mr. Edwards, it would take 160 acres to do that. So we would have to find a site of 100-plus acres.
So,
If-
but you still got to find a site in Boynton of
No,
160.
the site is, if we're going back to the conversation of a consolidated high school, middle school complex, that has to be a vote. Then we have to decide the best location. We can't choose a location first because the location may not be suitable for that large of a structure. So that's what we get out of this. We have to decide, are we going to continue to push for the option 4, or any board member that voted in favor of option 4 can bring up for a revote for consolidation or a hybrid of option 4. That's why we have to pull all this information in together to get a consensus before truly we push that to the Board of Supervisors, because we as a board has voted on option 4. As stated, option 4 is a new high school, middle school complex on Bluestone side, a new high school, and a renovated high school, a renovated middle school. That's what we voted on, not a hybrid version that we've talked about. So we need to decide, what are we really going to ask for the Board of Supervisors to support? A hybrid of option 4, or we're going to go back and look at the idea of a consolidated high school, middle school complex. That's the purpose of this conversation. Any ideas, board members?
Well, I think we need to find out what the budget is for this. You know, how much money, when you're talking about what you want to do to Park View, well, I think it all depends on how much money.
The Board of Supervisors have, it's been in the papers and in their minutes that they have committed to $100 million worth of debt service to fund this project. That's my understanding, if I read the newspapers correctly and read their minutes of their last meeting.
So we're $100 million.
So if you could do
$90 million to
$90
$10 million in debt service.
Okay.
No, they have 10 million.
Right, that's what I'm saying. 100 million total.
Mr. Ritchie.
Right.
Okay, so so if this hybrid version of option 4 could be done for that amount of money, then that's what we would do?
Well, we have to decide what the hybrid is. If the hybrid, and this is where we can talk about, and everyone can have an opportunity to see and hear. Now that the idea of doing a hybrid is not a complete renovation of Parkview High School, possibly closing certain wings of that high school off and adding bleachers and I think sewer and windows, that's what we need to talk about, whether or not that's going to be acceptable to the people.
Right.
Whether or not, now the people that have come before us before and done those surveys have never talked about a hybrid. They talked about a complete renovation and a new school on each end, because it may cause concern with when you tell a child that we're not going to do a complete renovation, yet on one end, as this county has always been separated to a certain degree, you got kids on one end getting brand new everything, and their kids are going to get a partial piece. So one, as a board, we can have our ideas, but that has to be put, we got to have a professional architect to actually give us. First, we have to come up, what are we thinking about? And then the public can weigh in. So if we're talking about a hybrid at this point, that needs to be put out in public, what the hybrid means, and whether or not the people in our prospective districts are okay with that.
Well, I have a comment real quick.
Mr. Honeycutt.
And that gets back to what I was saying earlier, before I was chastised in the public about doing research. I take my position on this board very seriously. Again, I don't have any children in the fight, but I care about the children of Mecklenburg County and every citizen that belong in this county. So yes, I have done some homework and looking at some schools, and uneducated me, I have a high school diploma, I have no book sense past that, but I have common sense. I've run a business for 20 years very successfully. With that being said, Mr. Sturdivant, I need some guidance on what those numbers are going to truly be of what we want to do at Parkview. I mean, again, we can sit here all day and say, well, we want new bathrooms, we want new windows, we want a roof, we want bleachers. But until I have some real numbers, some real educated numbers where I can see it in black and white and not projected numbers, then I don't know how we could move forward. That's why we need a representative, we need an architect to guide us along the way.
I agree, Mr. Honeycutt. That next phase, after the supervisor approves or disapproves what we're trying to do. But that's the point we have to get to, and part of that, Mr. Ritchie, you brought up, that number can go up or down based on how much space you want per child.
Well, that's what I would put to the Board of Supervisors. Like Glenn said, the price per square foot sounds right. It was about $200 per square foot. That we,
a little more.
Or, yeah, or 225. That we look at schools that are closer to the size of the schools that are being built per student, which is 150 square feet per student.
Well, let me I just want to add one clarification because I found it here. The national average for square foot per student in 2015 was 180. Okay. That's national now.
Right.
And so I think what you can see both in the Virginia Department of Education and in the national average, it's trending upward. And that's because of things like you saw tonight, the space to fly drones and collaborate and do various things require more square foot per student than, say, earlier model schools.
Right.
Mr.
But that's the mean, which means there's quite a few schools that are smaller than 180.
Right. The lower quartile is 148.
Right.
So 150 is the lower. That means that 75% of the schools being built today have more than 150 square feet per student.
Right.
Ms. Bailey?
Yeah, since we're talking about square footage, the Crabtree plan called for the Bluestone complex to have capacity of 1,450. And today, or as of May, based on last year's ADM numbers, total Bluestone Middle and Bluestone High School was 994 students. Now, let's just make an assumption that we could possibly reassign some. Let's say we could reassign 100 kids. Now, I don't even know if that's possible, but if we could do that, that still only brings their capacity, up to 1094. And I don't know why we're even considering, that figure for Bluestone Complex for 1,450, when even with reassignment of 100 kids, we're only going to get to 1,100 kids.
Wasn't it 1,450 that have duplicate schools on each end?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's one of the ways. That's one of the things that, first of all, not 200 square foot per student, and certainly not for 1,450 kids. Again, that's another.
But that just makes the Parkview one bigger, though.
No, it doesn't, because the numbers at Parkview.
But they built in projected increases.
No, they did build in projected. I get that, but our enrollment at Parkview High School is 822.
Okay.
And so, if you reassign 100 of those, or let's say 75 of those, then you're looking at 750.
We have 1,400 and some odd high school students in the county, right?
We have 2,400 high school and middle school kids.
How many high school students do we have?
Right.
But we have about 1,400 and change, and then with the increases built in, that's where they came up with the 1,600.
What'd you
That's
say,
the way
Mr.
I
Campbell?
understood it.
Around 1,360.
1,360 high school. Okay.
But the point I'm trying to make is we must adjust our projected cost based on that square, that amount of kids. And again, the population of the county is greater on the eastern end. That's just a fact. And I'm not willing to bus kids from South Hill just to make the schools even. I don't even think we can do that. I don't think there's any way to make that happen.
I think part of it is if you're looking at a consolidated school, then all the kids will go to one school.
But
if you're looking at the numbers as they stand, I think what you're getting at is building a larger school on one end and a smaller school on the other.
Well, that's what I'm getting at, yeah.
Okay.
And just to clarify, the report, the 1,450 was 800 high school students and 650 middle school students on the western end. And then it just says 800 high school because the Parkview Middle School would be converted to accommodate 650 students. So again, the new high school will be 850 on the eastern end, Parkview. The new consolidated Bluestone would be 650 middle school, 800 high school, as designed.
And I think as we've gone through this process, we've gone from option 4 hybrid option for original to back to possibly consolidated at a unknown location. But for sake of time, this has led that we need to have another work session, which is going to be a specially called meeting just for a work session, that from beginning to end we can talk about it. That way, before the supervisors have to vote one way or the other, we're going to have some clarity. We're going to have some clarity whether or not we're going to go with option 2, location unknown, or whether or not we're going to go with a hybrid option. And if we go with that hybrid option, we're not going to be able to give cost, but we can give an idea or a concept that the supervisors will have to vote on. For sake of time, what we're going to do at this point, we're going to go back into closed session to address the 2 issues, the personnel, 2 personnel issues, and after that, we're going to come out only for action only, and the board members will have an opportunity to do a board member remarks. But for the sake of time, the only thing we have left to do, we're going to go into closed session, discuss 2 matters, come back, action, and vote on that, and then we're going to adjourn. So at this point, board members, we're going to go back down the hall for a special closed session. We're going to go back to the action phase. It's going to be action item. Let's get to it here. It's going to be action item E, additional personnel recommendations. Do I have a motion to approve the superintendent's personnel recommendation?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion from Mr. Edwards. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Ms. Garner. Roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturdivant?
Yes. Under item 12A, which is reminders, for the month of September, September 5th is Labor Day. September 14th, parent-teacher conference at the high schools from 4 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. September 16th is the regular finance committee meeting. September 19th is our regular school board meeting. As we discussed tonight, I'll be in contact with each board member to look at having another day to discuss our matters at hand with school facilities.
Mr. Chairman, are you going to do item I, action item?
Item I is a personnel matter. Mr. Mayhew is going to get back with Mr. Nichols on that.
We're going to table it.
We will table it. Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this point, we have board member remarks. This is an opportunity for board members to comment on the matters that relate to them, the county, and their district. We're going to start, Ms. Bailey.
You always start with Ms. Bailey, so I'll go ahead. I want to invite anyone who was not able to take a child to school today because of their age, if they are 3 or 4 and they're not in a preschool program, bring them to see me tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock at the Upper Room Ministries building in South Hill, and we can read to your child and give them a book to take home for free. And that way you can have your own little preschool at home. There are counties, localities in our state, Mr. Chairman, who received a grant this past year, and they have 95% of their preschool kids in pre-K. We don't have that luxury here in Mecklenburg County. There are many pre-K children who don't get into programs, and children need to be read to at home, and I'll be happy to help you model for you and give you a book, and because it's real important to read to your children. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Mr. Ritchie.
I have no comments.
Mr. Johnson.
No comments.
Ms. Garner.
Nothing.
Mr. Honeycutt. Mr. Campbell.
No comments.
Mr. Palmer. Mr. Edwards.
It's amazing what 10 minutes in the back room will do to soften the blows. We made peace. That's all.
Mr. Nichols.
Mr. Sturman and members of the board, I appreciate all of the patience and forgiveness and consternation that we all go through as we make these decisions that are very emotional and very difficult, and are going back and forth with the Board of Supervisors on the things that they recommend as we look at this. I point back to Mr. Campbell's comments last month about the fact that ultimately we're looking at opportunities that are going to be great improvements for our students compared to what we currently are working with, and that's a goal that we all have to keep in mind. I do think it's worthy of a point of clarification on something that came up when it was mentioned, the idea of roof repairs and money that had been set aside by the Board of Supervisors to do that. And I make this also in reference to a comment that I saw in the paper that was mentioned by the Board of Supervisors related to monies that are being used for maintenance right now. As I understand Mr. Carter, all of the monies that have been set aside for roof repairs or anything else are monies that they're looking at as part of that $10 million deposit that's in place. And that we will not have that money available to be used for other things once we make a commitment to what's going on. And that concerns me because, as our Director of Maintenance brought out tonight, we do have significant maintenance issues that have to be considered for all of our buildings right now. I'm not even sure how we're going to make it through the next couple of years before new buildings are put in place with the current facilities that we have at our middle and high schools. They are in very poor shape and apparently been allowed to go downhill as opposed to be taken care of in the past few years. So that's a great concern. And I also echo that we've made a huge impact, I think, on our teacher salaries by continuing to move towards the 2% increase for this year, despite the state's actions, as well as trying to help all of our personnel with their health increases. And I appreciate the board's moving tonight to transfer some funds. Of course, that too has to go to the Board of Supervisors for approval, but you've given us the first step. And I would like for the board to consider, as we look forward to the future, in addition to just the building, the opportunity to take to the Board of Supervisors when we make final recommendations, not just a recommendation for a building, but a recommendation for an education plan that will include a building, that will include opportunities for our teachers to have increases so we're no longer at the bottom of the scale. I don't know that there's a chance of being truly competitive, but we have looked at some costs that would include increases in salary so that we can be at the average, and we can certainly put forth costs that would take us above just the average if that's desired. And a third item that must be considered is the issue of how we maintain our buildings beyond this. And I have asked all of our principals to look at the development of this year's budget and working as well with Mr. Dalton at looking at this year's budget being developed so that we have a 5-year plan of action on what needs to be done to maintain and keep things up to date. I think we do ourselves a disservice if we don't take the whole package for the consideration of the board, because everybody needs to know what we're talking about as we're looking at these overall projected costs for our citizenry. Thank you, Mr. Sturman.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. At this point, I'm going to take an opportunity to speak. I want to thank each board member for the good dialogue. We may not always agree, but at the end of the day, it's a process. And I think in the end, we're going to come up with a consensus on where we should go. Academics is always first. As you know, board members, I'm on one committee of this board, and that committee is the athletic committee, because athletics relate to a lot of our children. My hope is at the end of this process, all children will have an opportunity to participate and compete on new athletic fields, have an opportunity for a swimming pool, to have a swimming team in Mecklenburg County, saying that we have the largest lake in Virginia, indoor track. Our fields are such that we can host regional events. It has been mentioned that this is a farming community, and we cannot forget it. To have a farm complex where our kids can learn the business aspects of farming and to do it while they're at school. I had hoped that we would have one of the best facilities in Virginia. We have some of the best teachers already. And as Mr. Nichols said, we're working on the pay. We want opportunities for all kids to have an opportunity who may not be athletes, but to have that opportunity in music, the theater, and those type programs to include competitive drama. There's opportunity for tennis, indoor track, boys volleyball, field hockey, lacrosse, and wrestling for all kids to have an opportunity to participate in. I have confidence in this board that as we continue this process, we will come to a consensus that's going to be the best for all kids in this county. At this point, do I have a motion to adjourn? We have a motion second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Meeting's adjourned.